Hello and welcome to the Hungry Strike for America update on the Honor and Knowledge channel, where we go over both me losing 50 pounds for 50 states to make sure, for some weird reason, I connect it with making certain that we, the Republicans, keep control of the House and Senate in the 2026 elections. We're going to go over some of the redistricting news, especially related to a Supreme Court hearing, very important for redistricting, on October 15th of this year. First of all, for the Hungry Strike for America, last week I reported losing the 9th pound, but said just going to put a special star up there for Irina Narutska, the Ukrainian immigrant that was killed in North Carolina, and Charlie Kirk, assassinated in Utah. Surrounded in black, just my little way of reminding myself about why the Republicans need to retain control over the House and the Senate in 2026. This week, I failed to lose another pound. Remember, I give myself to the end of October of 2026 to lose 50 pounds. I've already lost 9. But I am in my official I didn't lose a pound shirt. I have a picture of when I weighed 30 pounds more than when I started this latest journey to lose 50 pounds. And so that was 39 pounds ago. And here's the picture of when I started this journey, 9 pounds ago. Why 50 pounds for 50 states to retain the House and the Senate for the Republicans? Well, if Tom Hanks can explain why his character Forrest Gump ran across the United States a few times in the movie Forrest Gump, then perhaps I can explain why I think losing 50 pounds is my way of, at least one of my ways, of helping us to retain control over the House and the Senate. Perhaps it's MAGA meeting MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. Let's talk about Tennessee. I go over the states in reverse order of who voted for President Trump with the highest percentage in 2024, and in the number 9th position is Tennessee. And just coincidentally, in the Oval Office this week was a meeting between President Trump, members of his administration, and the governor and senators from the great state of Tennessee. First, Governor Bill Lee.
Mr. President, first of all, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your commitment for federal resources to the great city of Memphis. And it is a great city, and it has a great history and a great legacy. And we are very hopeful and excited about the prospect of moving that city forward. I've been in office 7 years. I'm tired of crime holding the great city of Memphis back.
And the Tennessee senior senator, Marsha Blackburn.
Could I ask our two great senators to say a few words?
Of course, Mr.
Marsha.
President, thank you so much. I want to say a thank you to Director Patel, because he had promised that he would come into Memphis. We've had Operation Viper there this summer. There have been over 500 arrests. There are over 100 indictments. And Memphis had the best stats they have had in years this past August. Last month, it was the best August they have had. We are so grateful, and we thank you.
And then Senator Bill Hagerty.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. President. And this is an issue that's plagued Memphis since I was a boy, Mr. President. And it's time that we addressed it. And I appreciate your leadership allowing us to do that. And the team that you've assembled here is going to help us deliver the most fundamental responsibility of our government, and that's public safety. This shouldn't be a partisan issue. This should be something that is our primary goal. And certainly I hope to see Memphis become the safest city in America. And thanks for the effort of all of your team here.
Senator Blackburn was reelected in 2024 to the Senate, so she won't be up for reelection for a few years. However, Senator Hagerty was first elected in 2020 to the Senate with about 62% of the vote in Tennessee, and he's up for reelection in 2026. Interestingly, and I didn't know this until recently, he had been the Trump ambassador to Japan during the first Trump administration. So he was there for about 3 years until he said he was going to run for the Senate seat. Besides being the Japanese ambassador, he had a lot of international trade background. And he also happened to be the director of appointments on Trump's first presidential transition team. So apparently he is pretty close to President Trump. I don't believe there'll be any problem with him gaining re-election in 2026. Seems to be a formidable person, pretty good for the Republican Party. For the House, there are 9 House districts. There are 7 Republicans who are pretty good Republicans. I won't go over them individually. There is 1 vacant seat that had been held by a Republican. He resigned the day after the big beautiful bill was approved by the House. He went into private business, so his seat is empty right now. That seat is up for re-election on October 7th of this year. So next month is a House election in Tennessee, which will most certainly go to the Republicans. I'm sure Speaker Johnson is looking forward to that. Now, the one House seat that I will discuss more in depth is the seat held by the one Democrat. It is held by Congressman Steve Cohen. He appears to be adamantly in favor of spending money on Green New Deals type stuff, and he apparently also is a very liberal individual. But it really doesn't look like Tennessee will be redistricting, unfortunately. Now, regarding redistricting, first let's go over the Supreme Court hearing for Louisiana versus Calais and some background information. First, we have Amendment number 15 to the U.S. Constitution. Bottom line is, the right to vote shall not be denied on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Then we have the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which essentially says the same things as the 15th Amendment. However, this act has been expanded in how it's been interpreted by the courts to support racially required gerrymandered House districts. As an example, and also as the basis for the Supreme Court hearing on October 15th, we have the state of Louisiana with its House districts as shown on this map. But let's just pay attention to the two House seats that you see here in blue, the number 2 and number 6 House districts. These two House districts were drawn to support having majority of African Americans. However, there's been a bunch of court challenges in Louisiana about this. Most recently, and the reason for the Supreme Court case, is a group that considered themselves non-African Americans said that this was unconstitutional. So first, let's look at a clip that was from a few months ago about the hearings in their 2024 session of the Supreme Court.
Welcome back. The Supreme Court heard arguments today in a case to test how much states can consider race when drawing congressional boundaries. The justices later this year will decide whether to leave in place Louisiana's congressional map that includes 2 majority black districts. It was used, this map, that is to say, in the 2024 election. Now, opponents of the map claim that a second created majority black district relied too heavily on the racial composition of that electorate. And what's really at stake here is not just this map in Louisiana, but the fate of the Voting Rights Act and the application in other congressional district maps on racial bounds.
Absolutely, and that is a really big concern for voting rights groups. There is a sense that the court could strike down Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act as unconstitutional. That is not the question in this case. There's also a concern that the court could accept an argument from Louisiana here, which is basically that courts should not be in the business at all in weighing in on these disputes over the drawing of political boundaries.
The U.S. Supreme Court will hear additional arguments on this case come October 15th to determine if the new district map violates the U.S. Constitution, and particularly the Equal Protection Clause of the U.S. Constitution, which is covers the clause, prohibits voting practices that discriminate based on race. And it was last year when a federal appeals court ordered state lawmakers to approve new district borders last year. And the new district stretches from Baton Rouge over to Shreveport, currently represented by Democrat Cleo Fields. The map provides a second congressional seat to African Americans who make up 1/3 of the voting population in Louisiana, but a group of voters challenged the map, arguing race was too great a factor in its adoption.
So the result of this Supreme Court hearing should be pretty significant in support of Louisiana and Florida and maybe other states in doing redistricting. For other redistricting news, we still got California doing their election regarding this in November, and we have Texas has already signed their map into law. Then we have Missouri has already started doing their redistricting, so it should be made law. Ohio still has to do their bylaw redistricting, so that's good for the Republicans. Utah will be still required as far as their Supreme Court is concerned. That will cause one to go to the Democrats. Maryland is thinking about doing redistricting. That would gain one for the Democrats. And in Indiana, they're thinking about doing redistricting. Nebraska is thinking about doing redistricting. Illinois is thinking about redistricting, but as this shows, they probably wouldn't get any more Democrat seats because they've already done so much. That's all on redistricting, folks. I'm looking forward to making another video next week. Please subscribe. Please comment if you want to. Please ask me questions. I gotta tell you, this redistricting thing is getting exciting, especially with the Supreme Court hearing. And before I move on, here's a little bright spot with regard to House redistricting information that actually could lead to getting rid of illegal immigrants being counted in the census for purposes of apportioning House seats. This says, if you do House redistricting improperly, it dilutes the votes of some voters. In my opinion, that could be used to support not including illegal immigrants in the population census for determining how many House seats each state gets. More on this in the future, hopefully. So, God bless Charlie Kirk's family. God bless you. God bless President Trump. And God bless America.